By 1190, the south and north nave walls and lower vaults were erected. The western towers were also underway, rising independently to the height of the Great Western Rose Window, perhaps the most famous stained glass in the world. By 1196, in failing health, de Sully was determined to make Notre Dame Europe's most extraordinary cathedral, even if he wouldn't be around to see it.
Maurice de Sully, in his will, left money for the roof of the cathedral, and through his generosity, left his mark on his beloved church.
The Cathedral of Notre Dame was finally completed in the mid-14th century, nearly 200 years after construction began. It was the symbol of an empire on the rise. Its grandeur and beauty was a harbinger of the power and glory to come. But first, the empire would be rocked to its foundations by a ruler who compared himself to a god, who encircled France in spectacular fortifications and constructed the largest palace the world has ever seen. The Neo-Gothic National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. has a piece of moon rock from Apollo 11 set into its southern stained glass window. 1648. France has a new ruling family, the House of Bourbon. The country has just emerged from centuries of bloody warfare and devastating bouts with the plague. The new king is just 9 years old. His name is Louis XIV. Louis begins his reign at a time when the nobles who had lost their bid for power won't let bygones be bygones. And with a young boy in control, they spy an opportunity. The nobles revolt, forcing young Louis and his family to flee into hiding. But the royal family regains control. And Louis vows he will never let anyone challenge his authority again. As the boy grew into a young man, his famous taste for the extravagant grew too, especially his massive construction projects. Unlike Notre Dame, a testament to God, Louis was determined to build a monument to himself. In a radical break with past kings, Louis takes absolute control by moving the seat of government out of Paris and setting it down in a small town 13 miles south called Versailles. In 1661, architects began work on a colossal complex that would be the nerve center of the empire.
Louis XIV wanted spectacular achievements. He wanted spectacular engineering, spectacular architecture. Versailles itself is a statement that says a lot about the kind of image he wanted to project to the world. You know, he wanted to be #1 power.
Versailles. It was here that the powdered wig and puff pastry were raised to high art. 700 rooms, 2,000 windows, 1,250 fireplaces, 1,800 acres of gardens, 1,400 working fountains. And not only did Louis call these magnificent digs home, he also called them office. Because if you're the king, you don't go to work. Work comes to you. After all, this is the dude who said, "L'État c'est moi." The state is me. And what better place to be the state than in a pad that's got an entire hallway made out of mirrors? Let me put it this way. If you were called on the carpet at Versailles, it was a pretty long carpet. By 1682, when Versailles was finished, it would have become the symbol of the power and the glory of the regime ancien.
His gardens and fountains were the most beautiful the world had ever seen. But they needed one thing: water. To solve this problem, Louis commissioned probably his most extraordinary feat of engineering: the Marly machine, an enormous pumping station to bring water from the Seine 3 miles upstream to his beloved fountains here. Inaugurated by Louis in 1684, the Marly machine was a miracle of hydraulic engineering. It was powered by the current of the Seine, flowing through 14 gigantic water wheels, capable of supplying 100 million gallons of water a day. In his mind, Louis now transcended mere mortality. He identified himself with Apollo, the Greek god of the sun, and adopted a new name, the Sun King. While Louis XIV was securing absolute power at home, he set his sights on the rest of Europe.
Louis XIV was an aggressor in a Europe that France was already the leading power.
To achieve his dreams of empire, the French monarch turned to one of the world's greatest military engineers, Sébastien de Vauban. Vauban showed his brilliance in the battlefield with a revolutionary strategy of attack, the parallel trench method. It would save lives and change the way wars were fought for hundreds of years. 1673. Vauban would put his parallel method of attack to the ultimate test. Under gunfire, at the siege of the Dutch fortress at Maastricht. Vauban stationed Louis's troops along a first trench running parallel to the fort and 600 yards away, out of cannon range. The parallel trenches moved forward until Louis's artillery was near enough to fire breaches in the walls of the enemy fort. His technique worked perfectly. The French troops swarmed through the breaches, overwhelming the Dutch defenders. Vauban's new trench warfare led to victory after victory and allowed Louis to travel to the front lines, hazardous duty for earlier kings.
Vauban offered him the possibility to be the winner at the war. The most beautiful attack of Vauban was the one where the king is here.
Every spring, Louis would lead his army to besiege border towns, taking much of the court with him, including his queen and mistress. Vauban's siege tactics helped Louis expand the borders of France. His defensive genius, building and renovating 300 forts around the country, virtually sealed France off from attack.
In ancient Rome, the geometrical shape that was considered most divine for building was the circle or the square for its precision and symmetry. We call this today the centralized plan. Now, this centralized plan became the inspiration for Vauban to build a fort, except in the shape of a star. But the real genius of Vauban was that he could adapt these forts to any terrain. He could read the valleys and the rivers and the cliffs and build his trenches and moats and walls to maximum effectiveness. He could eliminate blind spots where offenders could hide, at the same time giving the defenders the best vantage points in which to return fire.
What Vauban gave to the Kingdom of France is the fact that during 150 years after him, never the war became inside the territory of France. The war was always outside. That's very good for the king.
But Louis's unchecked spending on hundreds of forts left the country on the verge of bankruptcy.